And then having fun and safe meetings or activities, and then constantly reviewing and adjusting. If you break it down to those 4 steps, it's pretty simple. So we'll go through some of the things that we have locally as far as our council guidelines and state guidelines in the next slide. And you can see here that as far as the state guidelines, we're limited to having 250 people at one time in the outdoors and 25 people at one place and one time indoors. And so that's pretty simple as well. How you do that is not so simple. And we have a number of different resources on the council website COVID-19 page right now. And you can see at least one of the first images that you'll see on that COVID page and the kind of center lower right there. If I have the next slide. And so you can see if you make this decision as far as you're going to meet in person or meet virtually, you can start with this restart checklist, which is actually from the BSA. This is one of the resources on our council page, and just go through this checklist, and it's pretty simple. It's really there canned for you to use. And I know a number of different units are using this checklist to go through exactly how to set up a unit plan as far as meeting in person or virtually. Next slide, please. And the council also has a reopening plan that's right there on our council website for you that goes through unit activities, COVID-19 resources, not just the ones I've talked about, but there are literally hundreds of websites you can go to, whether it's a CDC, whether it's a state, or it's a lot of different government agencies as far as what things that you really need to be careful of when you come up with a unit plan. There's council guidelines for Eagle projects. I'll talk about that in a minute. There are also council guidelines for meetings and camping. Our council camps, the council office is open and has been for some time now. So all these things are in this reopening plan. If I can have the next slide, please. And so what about these meetings and activities? And you can see here that, it's very important to go through this step by step, because this is what the council is telling you that you need to do if you want to meet in person. And the first thing is to check with your charter organization. If your charter organization doesn't allow something to happen, then it's not a good idea to have that happen, because they are basically the organization that owns you and controls what you do. So that's the first step. Next step is something that you see here in one of our in-person Eagle Court of Honors, and that is to wear face masks. And even though this is a mother and pinning on the Eagle medal on her son here and her father standing nearby, this is the same family unit. They came in contact with people that were not in their family unit at this Eagle Court of Honor. So we had everybody wear face masks except if they were speaking from a distance of more than 6 feet from anybody. And so that's something that you have to keep in mind. This is something that is a little more strict than the state guideline that we say wear face coverings and maintain a 6-foot physical separation. But this is the policy that we're going with in council, so we need you to adhere to that. And then go through some of these other things, and I'll talk about the safety health questionnaire in just a minute. Transportation, I had a question just a few minutes ago about this, and we're recommending that all parents drop off their scouts at activities. If you have to share rides and do that, then you have to have the parents' consent in that. And a lot of parents have formed these kind of grouping pods with their friends and neighbors. That's possible to do that, but go through this as far as all these guidelines. And then if you can't follow these guidelines, don't meet in person. So there are a number of different steps you need to go through here. And then if I can have the next slide. Here's the safety questionnaire. This is something that's been on the council website for some time. We constantly update this, and you'll see any changes that happen to this safety questionnaire on the council website that are highlighted in red. And the last update was the 3rd of August. So please use this. If you don't want to keep a lot of paper on hand for using this for every one of your meetings and activities, then do something like what Troop 98 has done here as far as making a Google form that you can enter all this information for each of these questions on a digital device of your choosing. And the council has also come up with a Google form that is something we will have on our website very soon, so you can just use that and download it for any of your unit meetings, activities, and we'll also be using it for all of our council events. Next slide, please. So we talked about communication with your unit and your families. Here's a survey that we ran last month, and it was very clear from this survey that our families were not as comfortable with in-person activities before the 1st of September as compared to after the 1st of September. Sorry. And so, that's okay. Getting a little ahead of yourself.
Wait. I'm trying to do too many things.
Okay. So I thought I wasn't speaking fast enough or something. So anyway, so what we did was we basically didn't plan any major trips and activities other than Eagle projects and 2 Eagle Court of Honors before September 1st. We were going to have a camping trip at Fort Washington State Park this weekend, but that got rained out, and we didn't want it, particularly because we're focusing on first-year advancement, we didn't want to have people camping in the rain, even though normally we do that. So if I can have the next slide.
All right, I'll try and get this right this time.
Thank you. And so we have been doing Eagle projects since June, even though it was in the yellow phase for what the state called our reopening plan. We still did Eagle projects starting around the beginning of June. And so you can see one of our Eagle projects here, and you can see the Eagle project guidelines that the council has on the right here. So lo and behold, when we started doing these Eagle projects, our charter organization said you have to have a memorandum of understanding that says that each Eagle candidate running this project and leading this project and the Eagle Scout mentor must sign this agreement saying that they will follow these council guidelines that you see on the right, at least the first part of them on the right there. So we did that. You can see everybody in this picture wore face masks. They maintained a 6-foot separation. And this is not easy to do, but it can be done very effectively. So what we have been telling people they have to do, they've adhered to it, at least as far as these in-person activities. As far as meetings and camping trips, we have a large unit. We've got 100 scouts in our unit, so it's not that easy to have meetings with that number of people in one place. Our charter organization is Suckley Presbyterian Church. They have 3 rooms in that facility that can accommodate 25 people each. Now, we could have had 75 people in those 3 rooms enter and exit through separate doors. That's possible, and maintain no physical contact between those pods of 25. We found it was much simpler, though, to divide our troop into 2 places. We got permission from Jarretttown United Methodist Church to take half of our scouts and adults for meetings at Jarretttown United Methodist, and the other half will be at our charter organization, Suckley. So that's how we've kind of managed this, to divide it up so we don't have that many people crowding into one facility at one time. And we will also have cameras running so that people that are not comfortable with in-person meetings can have a Zoom link to go to still be able to participate in the meetings virtually at the same time. Camping trips are going to be a little more difficult with that many people, and we will have them throughout the fall. 1 person per tent. Cooking will be a hybrid between what we normally do, which is patrol-style cooking, and troop-style cooking. We haven't yet to actually do this, so we will probably have to modify things as we go along to maintain the food safety preparation and distribution, but that's the plan right now. And so can I have the last slide? And I just want to bring this up. I talked about this for the Cub Scout specific Be Prepared session last week, but utilize your den chiefs and utilize all of your scouts. And I'm sure you're going to hear from Bob Trejo about this. Scouts know technology, particularly when you're talking about virtual things, better than we do. They're versed in this sort of thing. So I would say use your den chiefs to plan virtual activities that are fun and engaging. The really important thing here is have fun activities that Scouts can do, and things that are interactive, like the poll that you saw Bob Trejo had. Use these activities and make sure that everyone's getting something and they're not getting too much Zoom fatigue from any of these virtual activities. So that is it. If there are any questions, I saw there were some chats that came up.
Yeah, Arlen, there's a question about, can you just give a little more detail on what troop style versus patrol style cooking means?
Oh, sure. So patrol style is where each patrol comes up with their own menu and cooks everything in their patrol area. With 100 Scouts, we've got 8 patrols, and so they would all be doing things kind of independently in their area. That, at least as far as how we think it's going to be manageable, is not as safe as if you had all the food prepared by one group of people. And what we're actually going to do is kind of a hybrid between it. So we'll actually take 3 patrol areas and have one patrol do the main course, one patrol do the salad, and that will be prepared for the whole troop, so that it's less actual food preparation area and more adult supervision of the food safety concerns that you would have to follow when you're preparing food for that many people. And then there's less food handling that will happen, so that you will actually have less people preparing it, less people distributing it to the whole troop.
Arlen, it occurs to me that that'd be a great topic to zoom into, no pun intended, at like a roundtable meeting and see what different people are doing for different things. You know, right. People used to come to our Eagle projects because of the pizza and the wings, right? And we just don't do that anymore. So, no. So how do you replace some of that? Still have the ability and need to feed people, but do it safely. So.
Right.
Okay, so we are going to move on to the next slide. Before we do that, I want to just let everybody know, if you've just joined, welcome. You're at the Be Prepared workshop. There is a chat session open, and Arlen has graciously agreed to monitor that for me while we continue. There is a lot of content here. We'll get through as expeditiously as we can. We will have time at the end for questions. We will send you, if you registered for this presentation, we will send you this deck. It is also being recorded for the council. They may choose to post it on Facebook or on other council media later on. In between each of these presentations, I want to throw out a snippet on something you can do. And it'll be indicated by this little scout who has a great idea in the top left. So this is a virtual crossover that was done by Troop 117. Many troops and packs sort of came into the COVID crisis right at the time when they were going to be having a whole lot of interaction, and one of those is typically a crossover. So Troop 117 in the Baden-Powell district did this virtually. They delivered neckerchiefs to each of the scouts, either dropping them off or sending them via the mail, and they actually had a bridging or crossing over ceremony on the screen. They asked the parents to put to remove their son's Webelow AOL neckerchief and put their brand new troop neckerchief on. They all recited the Scout oath and law, etc. So a really simple thing that you can do, and you're trying to create that correspondence to what would have normally happened in the real world. So one idea. Okay, next we have Kevin Connell, who's going to talk to us about Be a Scout. Kevin.
All right, thank you, Bob. That's a picture of myself dropping my daughter off at some camp out in New Mexico. A couple years ago, we toured New Mexico, and she worked as a backcountry ranger at Baldy Town for the summer. So it was a great experience for her, a great experience for me. So that's my picture. Next slide. So I'm here to talk very, very quickly about Be a Scout and why it's important, and some of the high-level topics, but more information soon at the end. All right, next slide.
Oops, sorry.
So in case anybody lives in a cave and doesn't know what Be a Scout is, it's like Amazon.com for scout shopping. It's where parents can find a local unit for their kids. And that website's advertised everywhere. It's on yard signs and flyers and posters and giveaway materials. It's even on the printed paper applications. So it's a great site to be familiar with. Next slide. So when the parents go to bscout.org and they put in their zip code and they tell what kind of unit they're looking for, a Cub Scout pack, a Boy Scout troop, a girls troop, a venture crew, whatever, it pulls up a list of all the local units, and it has contact information for that unit. Maybe, maybe not. If you look at the example I have here, which is from Virginia, just so nobody gets pushed in front of a bus, the second Cub Scout pack on the list has nothing, no location, no information how to who to contact or how to contact them. It has nothing there. So as an example, you want to make sure you have something there. You have to have a way to get more information. There's that, hey, request more information button for the parents. They click that, they fill out a form with their contact information, and it goes off into space. And if nobody's monitoring that invitation manager on my.scouting.org, then no one will reply to that parent, and that parent will go either someplace else or they won't join scouting in the end, right? So we want to make sure somebody's monitoring the back end of that. And then there's a way to apply or to join a scout unit, maybe. So you can see the units that are here on the page, none of them have apply now activated. So that parent has to go through the process of trying to get hold of somebody to find out more, to be able to apply. You want them to be able to just click, apply, and join, and you've got a new scout. So next slide. So where do you edit the information that the parents see? Well, it's on my.scouting.org. The PIN information is accessed by the key 3 through Organizational Manager. It's an easy to use toggle and radio button format. You turn things on, turn things off. Next slide. So any of the key 3 in the unit can access this information and edit the information. The leader, the committee chair, the charter organization rep, or a key 3 delegate can access this information. Any registered adult, not just a random parent, they have to be a registered adult, can be assigned in Organizational Security Manager by a key 3 to be a delegate and to take care of some of these functions. Next slide. Right now, there's the BSA is running a bscout.org contest. Any unit that updates their PIN between now and the end of September automatically gets entered into the contest for a drawing. They're going to pick 10 winners. The first winner gets a $500 Scout Shop gift card for that unit to buy supplies, materials, whatever you need. And then 9 runners-up will get $100 each. There's a catch. The way they're going to get in touch with you is by that contact information on your PIN. So if it's not right, if that phone number doesn't work, then they're not getting in touch with you and they'll go on to the next winner, right? So make sure that information's right. Next slide. So if you want to learn more, this is very high level information, but next Thursday at 7 p.m., I'm running a webinar on all the details, marketing plans, how you make your PIN look better than everyone else's, and how you make sure that the parents click, and what to do after they click. So all that information next Thursday, 7 p.m. Check the council calendar for the Zoom link. It is, I call it a webinar, but it is Zoom. It's in person and interactive. So there's that. All right, that's my talk. If there's any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Arlen, do we have anything specific to Kevin's presentation? And
I don't see anything specific yet.
Okay.
So.
We might circle back to you. Thank you very much, Kevin.
All right.
Okay. Here's another idea. So using a Zoom poll as a pre-opening or just for fun. So we did it at the start of this meeting with the legacy merit badges. This is a great way to involve your scouts. So this was one of our assistant senior patrol leaders. I sent an email to the various parents and said, send me baby pictures. And we put this up at the opening, and we had a choice of the different scouts. You could do this for any scout, right? What scout is this in our unit? You put up their photo as people are joining the meeting, and then this is pretty easy to do. In the upper right-hand corner, you can click on the polls function. For Zoom, there's also tutorials on this, and as Arlen pointed out, your scouts are very adept at this. So give them the ability to actually create these things for your online meetings, and they'll do just fine. If you're not using Zoom, if you're using something else that doesn't have built-in poll functionality, you can use Google Forms. Those are free and easy for everybody, super simple, and then you pop up the result later on. If you have photos, or if you have a scout that can be in charge of your photos, it's a phenomenal way to jazz up your presentation, make it more visually interesting, and just create, memories and some sort of relationship, among your youth. Okay, so now we have Seth Brown, Advancement Chair Troop 14, who's going to talk about the Webelos to Scout transition. Seth.
Thanks very much. As you said, my name's Seth Brown. I'm from Troop 14. We're out of Telford, Pennsylvania. That sits right at the edge of Montgomery County and Bucks County. We drove from the Souderton School District primarily, but we have some scouts that travel from other areas, which is really nice for us. So I believe I was asked to do this because we've got a pretty good reputation in the area of being able to recruit people. We don't have a feeder pack to our troop. We are kind of isolated in that manner. So it's a little bit more difficult for us to get our scouts. So we have to work a little bit harder. So over the years, we found different ways to do this recruitment. And I've learned a lot from the leaders in my group. So most of this information I'm sharing is not my own. It comes from years of history that I've learned when I joined the troop. And a lot of the things that the leaders are doing now, I've integrated into this presentation. So you can go to the next slide. That picture of me, let me explain. Yes, that's me a long time ago. My two guys there are, one's Life, one's Eagle now, or almost Eagle, I should say. He's working on his project. The guy on my far right, which would be your left, is about 6'1" now, and the other guy's about 6'3" now, and they're eating quite a lot of my food and spending a lot of my money, and they're doing a great job at that. So you can hit the next slide there. So I don't know who we have represented here, but if I talk about troops, substitute unit, I know we've probably got other different types of scouting organizations here. And also, I think we're forgetting a little bit about when we say Cub Scouts. Sometimes we get new people that were not in Cub Scouts before that want to join. We've had that happen quite frequently to our troop, which I think is pretty interesting. So anyone that's of the age should be a Cub Scout. I'm talking about them here. Preparation here to succeed for your scout pack. I like to think of the troop as a business. So this Webelos to Scout transition is just a process within that business. And I think by thinking of it as a process, it helps us to remember that it's an ongoing activity. It's not something that we just focus on in the few months of the year that recruiting and crossover ceremonies are getting attention, but it's something you do all year, all the time. We get potential scouts all year in our troop. It really surprised me, but it's something you always have to be ready for. Okay, so on my slide here, I say somebody in your troop should be having a role of being the person in charge of this transition, but everybody in the troop need to support that, and so you need to raise awareness of this within your troop, all the way up from your chartered organization, your committee, with the scouts, with the scout parents. Everybody should know what your program is about here. So the other point I want to make is that, as I said, this is an all year round activity. So you always want to be ready to recruit, if you will, or make the Webelos to Scout transition easier. Part of that is having basically having a good troop. You always want to be making a good first impression. You want to have a good, consistent organization. behavior among behaviors an individual act, but organizations can influence individuals' behavior by having rules and regulations. So with our troop, we're constantly praised by people outside of our group for our behavior when we camp, we do an outside activity, when we host an open house, any of these things, because the scouts and the adults know what standards are expected of them, and they act accordingly to that. We're trying to be well organized. We know our assignments. The leaders, and that means leaders being scouts and adults, we give enough time to train people for these activities and make sure that we share the information with all the scouts so that they're comfortable running activities like open houses, or if we get a visitor, they know what to do, and that kind of thing. We are normal people. We do have issues. Things happen. If we do have a problem, we attack it right away. If we need to change our guidance on something, or change a rule, or discipline somebody, we make sure that we do it right away. And we take that knowledge as far up as it needs to go, whether the committee's got to know about something, or whether it's just somebody's parent, or we have to talk amongst the scout leaders, whatever. But it's something we try to look at all the time, that our behavior is good. That means quite a lot. So when our behavior is good, it cycles up. We constantly get good comments from outside people. The troop members, the scouts, everybody feels good about that, and they want to continue to do well and have good behavior, and it kind of cycles, and it's a good thing. It's great for morale. It also influences the Webelos scouts or that are visiting, or if we have a new person in our troop, that's also, that's a great thing for them to see. It's great advertisement about your troop. New scout parents, also, they want to know that, the things are going well. They see that, it makes them comfortable. The last point here is, second to last point here, the scout-led troops are the best. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's also something that's very important to us. So my last point on this slide is about marketing materials. You really need to have these marketing materials ready when people visit, and that's all year. As I said, people drop in, you see people at different events or whatever, maybe when you're not really actively thinking about crossovers or getting a new scout. Here's somebody at your door saying, hey, I just transferred to the school district, or oh, I just left my other troop, or I took a break from scouting, I'm coming back in after 6 months, I heard about your troop. You got to be ready to have this marketing materials. And I say marketing because I can't think of any other term to use, but I just think about it as some kind of way to communicate to the outside world. So you can hit the next slide, please. So this is an example of what one of our materials are. You can see this, it's a landscape brochure. It's one piece of paper printed on both sides, kind of a threefold thing here. When you're anywhere out at like a coveree or something, you can hand this to somebody. You can see the first page. If you go back there's photos on the front of it. Say, oh, here's where we were at Sea-Base, pictures of the orange. This is our logo on the back of our neckerchief, etc. Oh, why were you doing this? Whatever. You can have conversations about this and begin to talk about your troop, which is a good thing. Next slide there shows a little bit more of the detail where we talk about our plans for the year, some of the activities that we constantly do all the time that are always on our schedule. And most importantly, we've got our contact information at the bottom right for our Scoutmaster. Someone can email him and get in touch if they want to. So if somebody has this in their hand, they can really communicates well about our troop. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we think about this transition process, it's a process, but think about it also as a product that you're providing to your Webelos Scouts and your first year Scouts. And we want to think about this as a service because it's something that we want to continually provide with consistency. We want to follow rules that we've established that for how we want to do this all the time. so that anybody can do this. It's not going to be down to a particular person that's just good at this. Anybody in the troop should be able to pick up a plan and have rules to follow. So it's good to write these things down. You also want to monitor this very well, and you want to make sure that you're doing a good job. You can use SMART goals. I think everybody knows that, but SMART meaning specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. So those kind of things you can do to set goals for your troop. The other great thing is you want to do feedback from all of the people involved. So you want to make sure that you're discussing things with the new scouts, the new scout parents. Get feedback how your program is going. The scouts in the troop are talking to the new scouts all the time. Get feedback from them also. And also talk to parents, talk to people on the committee. You really never know how information travels, and you'd be surprised what kind of feedback you can get from anybody. So it's always important. The last piece on this one is the only way that you can measure whether you're doing it right or wrong is the scout's experience. How is the scout? How does the scout feel about what you're doing? So that's the point. You want to discuss this with the scout. And if you fail, let's say a scout is with you and they decide not to pursue, or a Weeblo comes to you, visits your open houses, etc., and decides not to pursue going with your troop. You can't necessarily think of that as a failure, because the idea here is Weeblos to scout transition. It doesn't mean that the scout has to join your troop. If they stay in scouting, if they like what they see in scouting in general, and they join scouting, that's the goal. You got them into scouting, so don't necessarily just think they have to come to your troop. And you can support that. If somebody doesn't fit your troop, and you know there's another troop that they might be better suited to, suggest that to them, follow up with them, and you know you're doing your job for scouting, and not necessarily benefiting your troop, but you're helping someone to make that transition, which is the goal. Next slide, please. So here's some things that we do in our troop. I wanted to pass along, and I just call it helpful techniques here. First thing, consider having status meetings periodically with your committee. Have separate meetings or scheduled phone calls with the new scout parents. You can even designate a volunteer of a parent that maybe not on the committee, not one of the leaders or something, as a contact point for new parents, so that they can ask questions that maybe they're a little bit shy of asking the leaders or what have you, or they want to get a little bit more personal about different questions they might have. It's good to have that, give that parent an opportunity to ask those questions. And as I said, always check in with your new scouts all the time. One thing that we do is we invite our new scouts up to sit with the committee, either when they're getting their scout rank or well before that. When there's a committee meeting, we usually have a committee meeting upstairs, and we have our scout meeting downstairs. So it's very convenient. Just invite the scouts up, introduce them to the committee members, talk about what a board of review is, talk about how the leadership role of a scout changes as you start to as you move up the ranks, discuss what's going to happen at a board of review. These little things, get them in front of there, kind of shakes off the nervousness, and it also lets them see that there's a group of people that are supporting them. So it's very very welcoming thing, puts them at ease. We also solicit ideas from them. What kind of camping trips do you like to do? What do you want to do as an activity? These kind of things. And it helps us to plan things and keeps them interested. Next point is we have a patrol that we set up just for crossovers and for new scouts. And when we have a Weeblos visitor, or we do an open house, we usually have them put into that patrol, especially if it's just a normal day and not necessarily, when I say open house, if we just invite somebody. If we have a formal open house, we do different things. But if they're just there for a meeting to see how things go, we put them in that patrol. This patrol's led by an experienced scout, usually a troop guide. And this patrol leader is going to be someone that has guidance about how to manage that patrol. They'll know what they're going to do for every meeting, and they'll report back to the leadership with whatever they've done on that meeting. So we constantly have that communication going. The advantage of having a separate patrol is that you can break away from the main group. If the main group is doing something like preparing for a camping trip, or they're doing some other activity that's not related to new scouts, you can break away, do some new requirements with the scouts. You can basically have that flexibility, and that's the main reason for that. Plus, it's individual attention, and that's what these new scouts need when they start. There's a lot more interaction needs to be had with the new scouts. Be active in helping the crossovers achieve their requirements and rank. So we find out basically that if you can promise a scout that they'll achieve a certain rank if they go to the meetings, go to camp, participate, say, hey, you will be a first class scout within a year's time if you do all these things. We can essentially promise that to them. And if they attend the meetings, they usually will hit that mark. And it's a good thing, because when you look at that book first and you see all those requirements for a new person, that's very daunting. But if they know that they have the support of us, they know that we're going to do requirements during meetings as often as we can, and there's some organization behind it, that's another comforting thing. And it makes it easier to get scouts to comply and to listen to. They know there's a goal, they're going to do it. And that was always what we used to say. We would get a scout to first class in 1 year if they did, X, Y, Z. Next slide, please. So, okay. The point here in number 4 is make sure the experienced scouts are working with the new scouts, and proper introductions are made. This is something that the patrol leader or that troop guide is going to do. The idea of this here is to get the new scout introduced to everybody in the troop, get them comfortable, have the activities mixed up so that they're not with the same people all the time. They get to see the different personalities of the troop. If maybe they're not hitting it off with somebody, they'll like somebody else better. It also keeps it interesting for them. So keep the groups small, and try to get people socialized well. The other point I wanted to make here, when you have a patrol leader here or a troop guide, make sure that it's somebody that's far enough along in Scouts so that if they have to miss something else that the main group is doing, they won't be affected by it. They have all the requirements, whatever. So make sure it's a very, an advanced Scout, so they're flexible and they're kind of their time is free. Number 5. Scouts, Cub Packs are always playing games in their meetings, and we need to continue to do that. We need to make it fun, as somebody said here before. It encourages attendance, and there's a lot of things you can do with games that are strictly related to scouting. I know there's online stuff that's related to scouting and a first aid that you can just pull off the web, and you have to do nothing. So those have been great for us during these times, and we've had to do Zoom meetings, and it's very helpful. So the last point on this slide is to keep their interest. You talk about the future a lot. What about the trips you're going to go on? What are you doing this year? What are you doing next year? High adventure trips. Find out what they want to do. What are their ideas? I find sometimes at the end of our meetings, when we finish a meeting, we have a little free time at the end, and the Scoutmaster will say, "Hey, we've got no trip plan for October. What are you guys interested in doing?" And we'll just start rolling ideas. You want to go to the rock gym? You want to have a backpacking trip? You want to do a canoe trip? You want to go up to Musser real quick and work on the building we adopted? You want to work on hiking? We can do a hiking trip. And you look at the first year guys and the crossovers, and their eyes just light up because they cannot believe that you can come up with 4 or 5 ideas that quickly. And they're exciting things for these kids to do. So that really keeps kids going, and you just, they start making suggestions themselves, and they join in, and that's what you're looking for them to do, is to engage with everybody. Next slide, please.
Hey, Seth, with apologies, I'm just going to ask you to try and be a little more concise, mindful of time, please.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely. So part of the things we do with our troop here, I'm going to list off all the different things we do. We'll show some pictures afterwards. We always have an AOL week and a Webelos weekend. We do it in August, right before the end of the summer. We either invite first-year Webelos or second-year AOLs to this, and we go somewhere that's exciting. West Point, Cape May, Coast Guard Base, etc. Cubbery is another great place to go. This is where you're going to go out, hand out your marketing materials. Always go with a good presentation. Do something interesting. Get the Scouts interested in your troop. It's the best marketing day of the year for you. We do something called a First Responder Day. We have an activity that the troop does to help Cub leaders. This is something where we have them do the whole first responder badge in one day. We give them everything. If you've been a Cub leader, you know that this is a great thing. This is a day you don't have to do anything or plan anything. It's a break. So we get a lot of good response for this. So come up with an activity of your own and try to do that. Open houses, we do one night, maybe two, but as I said, we do open houses anytime somebody wants to visit us. Klondike, I think everybody knows about here, but just in case, if you don't do this, this is a great thing. We invite the Webelos that have a strong interest in the troop to join, to come and be on one of our teams. It gets them ingratiated with the members of the troop immediately. It's a great thing. The last thing here is that your troop should be Scout-led. This is the best thing that you can do to get the Webelos to Scout transition working properly, because the Webelos, when they see that the boys are running things, that really excites them. That's very, very attractive. Parents see this, they think it's the greatest thing in the world that the boys are doing this. They want their kids to be in a troop like that. It's the best advertisement that you could ever have. The value of that is immeasurable. Next. Okay, so here's us at West Point Military Academy. You can see there's a couple AOLs mixed into the group here, even family members of the Scouts. Next one. Okay, this is our First Responder Day. We have that in our parking lot where our cabin is. We invite the local EMTs, fire people, and we do activity inside our cabin, and we complete that whole first responder badge. This is one from Klondike. A couple AOLs are here in the group with the other older Scouts participating in the challenges there. And the next slide is just a picture of the Klondike sled race, and that's a lot of fun, builds a lot of memories for the young Scouts immediately. So that's a great thing. Someone's in the first responder pick. So, okay, so focus on your communication, build the relationships, keep your crossovers interested, make the scouting experience enjoyable, make it fun all the time, check in with your Scouts, with the new Scouts all the time. Follow your rules, be consistent so that anybody can come in your troop and run a program. Keep your improvements coming, and remember that the Scout-led troop is the way to go.
Sorry.
Yep.
Great. And Seth, that link at the bottom, that's just ideas on how to improve the Webelos transition, right?
That is correct. Yeah, that's from the BSA.
Great. So we'll send that out to all the participants. So thank you very much, Seth. Arlen, someone in the waiting room, if you could just pull them in, please.
Got it.
Check on that because I don't recognize the name. Let's make sure it's not a Zoom bomber. Okay. So here's an idea. And if you were in the original presentation on the Be Prepared presentation, apologies, but this is something our troop did. We actually bought that Lego kit in the upper right-hand corner. It's called the Velociraptor Paddock. It costs $3.99 at lego.com, and it has about 40 pieces. And if you build it according to the instructions, that's what you get. But if you hand one of those to a scout in your troop and say, build something different with all those pieces, you get the thing in the bottom. Then you take a bunch of photos of that thing, you put them up on a website or in a document, and you turn this into an inter-patrol game during a virtual meeting. So each of the patrols had to pick their patrol builder. We broke them into breakout sessions, and they were coached by their patrol members into building whatever that was, and whoever got it right the soonest won. This was a phenomenal activity. We're actually thinking about doing it with additional things. Here's the actual scouts in the breakout rooms with the result. So inter-patrol competition, it's hands-on, it involved the PLC, there was outstanding teamwork and spirit. Provided leadership opportunity within the patrols and even to the game master that organized this thing overall. There were some problems, like some of the scouts had trouble like sort of having the Zoom meeting open and also going to the website where the, sort of rotational photos were. But again, you only get good at those things by trying them. So something really neat. And also the other thing we found is that scouts like to get things at home, right? So kids don't get mail. So when you drop off or mail them something, it's a pretty big deal. All right, so my presentation is on best practices for virtual meetings. The bottom right-hand photo is me and my daughter Caroline, who was a venturer. We took our venture crew to Philmont way back in 2015. Phenomenal trip. So I'm going to give you some quick tips on things to think about for virtual meetings. And this slide I usually end with, but I'm going to start with it. So let me try and run through these very quickly. We created something called the 7 pillars of virtual scouting, and they're these. So choose only the best stuff that scouting has, right? Choose this, not that. So if, we know everybody has to do like the rights and responsibilities of a citizen, but that's not nearly as fun as lighting fires and sharpening knives. So try and think about what the scout is going to be really responsive to. I'm not suggesting that you ignore the other stuff, but pick things that scouts like. In fact, ask them what they'd rather do and drive them to doing the things that they like. Turning in person into virtual. So how do you make it work not in person? So the Lego game was an example of that. The crossover that I showed you photos of is an example of that. So think about ways to replace what you would normally do in person in a virtual setting and build in things that will make it seem more in person. We've heard this over and over again. Involve your youth in planning and delivery. That's what they're there for. That's the essence of scouting. Involve scouts before, during, and after. So involve them in planning meetings. Make sure you give them things to do during the meetings or the activity, and then give them homework, even if it's just a review of how things went, but ideally anticipating something that's going to come up in the next meeting. Personal connections. How do you establish a personal connection, right? When you're not at your regular Monday night meeting and you're saying hello to all the scouts walking in and they're like, hi, Mrs. Single, how are you today, right? And you just say, hey, how did your swim practice go? How do you replace those 10-second or 30-second interactions in a virtual environment? We think there's ways of doing that, and we've been showing you some of those today. Skill delivery. So getting a good slide deck, making sure that people are monitoring the chat room, and all of these are things that your scouts can actually do. We encourage you to give them responsibility and formalize that process. And then striving for normalcy. How do you make things seem like routine? We encourage you, if you met every week, continue meeting every week. Do everything in your power to not cancel a meeting or an activity, even if it's shorter or different, but provide that continuity and that consistency and that routineness of scouting. So let's look at a few of those. So here's a slide. So this presentation was originally done by one of our ASPLs named Luke Murray, and he put that slide up and he said, do you like that slide or do you like this slide? So you're going to be much more drawn into something. So Luke talks about him on the Colorado Trail in the photo. It's got his rank pad, his position. It's got the troop number. It's got his name. It's got our little logo that we had one of our scouts build in the upper right-hand corner, which is the virtual scouting logo, which is, hey, hats off to him, and it gets a lot of airtime. So I'm throwing arrows down here at the bottom. So youth leaders are planning and delivering. We're involving scouts before, during, and after. So they're building the slide deck, they're presenting it. There's a personal connection. If somebody never knew Luke Murray and didn't get a chance to meet him at the meeting, they just found out something about him here. And if he says a joke or something like, I was terrified on that trip, but the Scoutmaster made me smile before he took the picture, it creates some level of that familiarity. So this was Luke's stuff, general advice. Think of your meeting as if you're putting on a show. No screen handoffs. And it's awkward to keep saying next slide, right? But it's easier than handing the thing off and people have tech problems and whatever. And I keep messing up. I could be doing a better job with that. But it's still, we found it's better to minimize screen handoffs. Be enthusiastic. Learn and use the technology alternatives you have. We showed you Zoom polls tonight. There's lots of other tech things. We often will have a meeting just to try something new ahead of time before we deliver it at a Scout meeting. Pretend you're in a conference room. Use the slide deck. The slide deck gathers people's attention. If you have no slide deck and someone's speaking and you look, I'm looking at all of you right now, it's just different. You'll see the reaction of people is different than if you have something drawing them into the screen besides just sound, okay? And a funny picture can help draw attention and lighten the mood. All of these are points for the pillar of skill delivery. So Luke loves to do this picture, where this was the NRA Whittington Center on the way to Philmont in New Mexico, and he had this picture of the boys' anti-tank rifle, and he said, you know, if you vote for me for senior patrol leader, I'll make sure every scout gets his own boys' anti-tank rifle. Right? Use a photo, tell a story, change it up. Let's not use the same photo of Luke Murray. Right? Hopefully you have access to these things. If you don't, hey, put a scout in charge of all the photos and say, everybody send your photos to Tommy, and then invite Tommy to the meetings where you plan the meeting and produce the deck, okay? Here's our Pledge of Allegiance, right? And Jake Boyd is a silly picture of Jake. And notice that I didn't use the same flag in this picture as the flag we used at the start of the meeting for our Pledge of Allegiance. Change it up. It's not hard. All of this stuff is in the public domain. We put up the Scout Law. We highlight one of the points of it. And you could just have everybody stand there and say it, but you're squandering an opportunity to have a Scout lead it and to put up his photo and have him speak and say something about himself every time. And we make sure that every meeting we use somebody different. So we're trying to get everybody some airtime to create that personal connection. Breakout rooms are fabulous. Hopefully you're operating on the patrol method. Ships and teams, you know, if you have enough people and you can divide them, it's really helpful to have smaller aggregations of people. We do quizzes. Boys Life has tons of these. We quiz them on famous quotes, but sometimes we break them out and they have nothing to do. They just hang out with each other. And they really like it. This was from our meeting last night, and I happened to notice that Alex had a Star Destroyer behind, and he brought it up to show it to me and talked about his Lego kit, right? Personal connection that was able to happen because we allowed that free time in the meeting. So I don't know if you can use any of this, you know, directly, but if you think about these things as you deliver and think about how do we maintain this connection? How do we make scouting still work and be cool and interesting? How do we involve our PLC and make personal connections? And how do we practice and get really good at this and make it seem normal? I think you'll actually have a significant ability to succeed. These are the 4 guys that ran for senior patrol leader last time in May. So we had online campaigning. They each made a statement. We put it on our website and sent scouts to consult. We had a Q&A, and then we used a Zoom poll to actually do the voting. So it worked just fine, and EJ on the right is our current senior patrol leader. I've put up our website, which has lots of examples of this stuff. Every single one of our old meeting decks is on there with ideas for what you could do, and you could email me if you'd like any additional help. We actually could bring our PLC to meet with your PLC if you want to share ideas. You're welcome to visit our meeting. We've actually visited many other scouts' other troops' virtual meetings just to see what they're doing and get good ideas. I don't see any questions here. Let me give you one more idea. So this is called a virtual advancement board. So at our troop, whenever a scout passes his board, we immediately have him walk up to the board and move his name on the board from the previous rank to the next. We've now built that online. So during our meeting, at the end of every meeting, we ask, has anyone advanced a rank? And live on the screen, we could actually pull up this link can I present this tab? Is it showing? Is the change thing showing? So we could grab Ryan Conahan and move him from star to life, and everybody claps and Zoom, and there you go. So these are things that you can do. This is an attempt at replacing normalcy and making everything seem routine and turning in person into virtual. All right, mindful of time, let me zoom right along. And we have John Macaretta talking about in-person meetings.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. I'm John Macaretta, the Scoutmaster of Troop 474 in Roxborough. That's me with my son, Peter, at his Eagle Board of Review a couple of years ago. Let me go to the next slide, Bob. So our experience, my troop meets at the Scout House on Henry Avenue in Roxborough. Some of you may be familiar with that. We had some in-person meetings in June, and we did in-person summer camp, day camp for a week this summer after our overnight summer camp was canceled, obviously. It worked out very well. We have a smaller troop. We only have 20 scouts split into 3 patrols, and the only reason it worked is because we had a lot of parent support. One of our dads is actually an infectious disease doctor, so it made the planning and everybody's comfort level with it go way up. We had the summer planning meeting. We met with the PLC. We're going to have in-person outdoor meetings at least for the next few months, as much as we possibly can. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what worked for us and what we're going to do. Let me go to the next slide. So the first question for everybody here is, why do you need to be inside? There is no requirement, no activity that must be done inside. Every troop here has lanterns and tarps. All the scouts have flashlights and raincoats. That picture should look familiar to everybody who's been to summer camp at Resica. Kids sitting around under a tarp by a lantern, working on badges, working on crafts, or goofing off. It's probably pretty damp that night anyway. So you need to challenge your PLC and yourselves. Why can't we have this meeting outside? If it's raining, okay, then I guess we're going to see how well everybody's rain gear works, and we can have a little analysis of that. Maybe you give every patrol or every kid a piece of rice paper and say, protect this, and let's see who can keep this dry by the end of the meeting. All the surveys say you're better outside than inside. We have the advantage of having a meeting place in the park. Every troop should have access to a park nearby or a churchyard or a schoolyard that you can use at least some of the times. I know when we have a weekend camping trip, half the kids show up with their own chair every time anyway. So sit down space works as well. Somebody sent a text. That's right. I almost used that quote. 3/4 of scouting is outing, as we used to say. So yes, there's no reason when it gets cold, daylight savings time doesn't end till November 1st. So if we go to the next slide, maybe there's a nature center nearby. People don't have after school sports. Many of us don't have a commute. So maybe if you start at 7, you could start at 6 or 6:30 and make dinner. Maybe everybody could cook a hot dog on a stick in a socially distant manner or something like that. There's no reason you have to go with what you did pre-COVID. You need to be a little flexible and think about it here. One thing we're going to experiment with this year is patrols can meet separately. We will have a couple of weeks where we'll say there will be no troop meeting. Each patrol leader is responsible for coming up with a plan for where and when your patrol is going to meet and what they're going to do. That doesn't all have to be at the same place. They can all meet somebody's backyard. These are many options that we've used and have worked well. And you can be prepared to have a virtual meeting, and if at the last minute or the day before you'd say, I don't like the weather tomorrow or there's a problem, you can always go virtual at the end. Let me go to the next slide. Here's some options we've done and we've talked about for being outside all the time. The whole meeting is a hike, and it can be point to point. All the parents can drop them off at point A, and the meeting ends when we get to point B where the parents pick them up. Maybe that's your meeting place. You could do a bike hike. The circuit trail is all over the city. You could, again, meet at the beginning or the end, and the whole meeting is a bike hike. Graveyard scavenger hunt. We meet at a cemetery with permission from the church. Here's a list. Break into patrols or teams. Go find any one of the following graves: the oldest grave, veterans of different wars, somebody with a name in the troop. The options are out there. We've done that every year. It's been a really good activity. The kids liked it. Frisbee golf. Every state park has a Frisbee golf course. A bunch of other parks has a Frisbee golf course. Every kid has their own Frisbee. This is a whole meeting. Maybe we review the rules and some technique at the beginning. They start on different holes. You've golfed for a whole meeting. Go fishing in the evening at your local stream. Another spread out activity. No kid needs to be fishing next to another one. That's the meeting. You can do night hikes with flashlights, or without flashlights is a good event too. Again, spread into smaller groups so people aren't bumping into each other. We've done pumpkin carving outside. Your patrols can have a campfire contest. We can, depending on your setup, you can build, you can have teams or patrols who can make the best fire, who can boil water the fastest. There are a million different options. The footnote down there at the bottom says, avoid carpools if possible. Arlen talked about this. One of our impediments is, usually you shove 6 kids in the back of a car on a camping trip. That just defeated all your other distancing and other issues. So that's hard to do. Let me go to the next slide. The other key to this is patrols. Everybody here, all your speakers talked about patrols. I'm not going to preach the gospel of patrol method, but I'm a disciple. Let me just point out that in social distancing terms, patrols are natural cohorts or pods. You can spread them out and they function within themselves. So if there's a problem or somebody turns up sick, you haven't exposed them to the whole troop as much. We are big on competitions among patrols with prizes every week. Again, the patrol can meet separately. That's encouraged, that strengthens your patrols. The one thing I will mention that I know some troops do is don't split brothers. Brothers should be in the same patrol during COVID. Otherwise, you're just exposing everybody to twice as much risk. And you're making life difficult for the parents. Let me go to the next slide as well. Here are some things we had that helped with this. On the top is a 6-foot staff. Each patrol leader got a 6-foot staff as a symbol of their rank and as a way to make sure everybody is appropriately distanced. They now have a 6-foot measuring device. Somebody said, we used to have a blood circle, now we have a COVID circle. That's how it works. At summer camp, every kid got his own 10-foot piece of paracord. Every kid got his own bandana. We have lovely Troop 74 masks. I'll come back to the frying pan in a minute. The paracord and the bandanas are color-coded by patrol. So if I ever see a kid with a blue bandana standing next to a kid with a red bandana, I can say, hey, spread out, you guys are in different patrols. If you want to practice knots, every kid's got their own paracord. That works on a virtual meeting too. Like Bob was saying, now, they have the gear to use. We have the masks, they weren't expensive. Hopefully we'll throw them away and never use them again or never think of them again in a few months, but they worked very well. It's part of the uniform. Here's how we did cooking. At summer camp, every kid had to show up with his own spatula and his own individual frying pan. We doled out the food, the hamburger patty and the bun, the bread and the cheese for the grilled cheese or your eggs, and every kid cooked his own food in his own pan. One of our guest speakers I'll talk about was a guy at a local diner who went over how to cook eggs and then walked around and guided everybody. So this kind of little bit of stuff will help you during a social distancing time, keeping everybody spread out and moving the program along. The next slide, if we could. The support for this, for these outdoor meetings, I talked about ways to do the outdoor meetings. You got to screen people. We had parents, especially parents who are nurses or doctors. No Scoutmaster should be standing at the beginning of the meeting with a thermometer or saying, where's your questionnaire? We had a lot of luck with our Eagle Scout alumni. Those guys may be home from college or virtually online. So if they can come and be unofficial guides or help with skills, you can assign one to each patrol. That really worked well for us. Some troops do this now, but especially during this works in person or virtually. Use your guest speakers. You're going to Gettysburg. We had some Civil War reenactors come to the meeting and talk about everything, made it better. One of our dads was a police officer. He talked right after the riots about the police officer's view of what was happening, George Floyd, what they're really trying to do, when they might ever use tear gas. The kids thought that was very interesting. Maybe you need some diverse voices. Maybe you have, an all-white or a predominantly white troop. Maybe you could find a black voice to tell about their experience. Again, in person or online with everybody spread out. Doctors and nurses can talk about their experiences during COVID. We had a nurse give a nice demonstration on how to actually wash your hands correctly. Local businesses worked great for us. Like I said, we had the owner of a diner who came in, talked about how to cook eggs. Those guys are happy to come out and share their experiences with you. If there's a nature center nearby, they would be happy to send a naturalist over and lead one of your patrols on a hike to identify their 10 plants or 10 animal signs or local poisonous plants or anything like that. There's another requirement done by patrol that you don't have to do. Let me go to the next slide as well. look, this has worked for us. In some ways, it's helped. It's helped push the PLC and forced patrol method on us in ways we didn't think. The kids have enjoyed it. You got to be flexible. You got to push your PLC to be flexible. There's ways to have fun here. Just focus even more than you usually should on having fun. We're looking forward to the next 3 months. And that's my presentation. There you go.
Bravo. That's fabulous, John. Got some great ideas there. And this is the benefit of just sharing ideas and seeing what other people are doing, right? I've picked up like 3 or 4 things that I'm going to write a memo to the PLC about right after this. Thank you. Any questions for John? I just see several kudos here in the chat, John. So good show.
All right. Thank you.
All right, I segued this one right in, and here's our little scout in the upper left with a great idea. If you've never done orienteering, this is super fun. So orienteering isn't just like taking a map and, you know, pointing at 17 degrees and taking 20 paces. Orienteering, you get a map, and there's these things called controls that have been hidden in the woods, and you have to go find them, and the best time wins. I call it hide and seek with a map in the woods. DVOA, which is the Delaware Valley Orienteering Association, runs meets on a regular basis. These 2 photos are from a meet that was held last July at French Creek State Park. And we took about 6 or 8 scouts that were actually working on the Orienteering merit badge, which was one of the merit badges that we were offering through the summer. It's very easy to be COVID compliant. In this bottom photo, we have Chris and his grandfather actually came out for the day. And I said that was the first time I actually had a grandfather participate in a troop event ever, which I thought was really cool. So it's really easy to do. You can do it as patrols. It's easy to keep distance. Generally, an orienteering meet, you're all not starting at the same time anyway. They want to spread you out so you're not just following the people in front of you. There's also something called a permanent course, and a permanent course doesn't need to be organized that day. So there's going to be markers that are placed at various places in the park or in wherever the location is, and you can download that map from dvoa.org and go there and run the course anytime you want. So orienteering is a super great sport, either on an organized basis or an individual basis. Very easy to do, and it has a lot of tie-in to Scout advancement. So another resource. Okay, up next we have Maria Sengel, who's going to tell us about her experience with her girl troop. Maria.
Hello, everybody. So this picture of my daughter and I is just before the troop started. It was in December of 2018. So this was our first unofficial recruiting event. Next slide, please. So we are currently at 11 scouts, chartered on the first day on February 1st, 2019. It like some other smaller troops that don't have, I know we're not supposed to use feeder packs, the term, but that don't have that, it is hard to recruit. So each one of these scouts, it's difficult to find them. Next slide, please. But we're having a great time. So we had a good 2020, then COVID hit. Our last event was a day trip to see Wicked on Broadway in New York and check out Central Park. And we're pretty lucky timing wise because within a few weeks we were shut down. Next slide, please. So we were able to start the first week of the shutdown meeting on blue jeans. So the last night before our local schools were shut down, we had a scout meeting. I let our scouts know that there was a pretty good chance we would be virtual, told them where to find the information about the virtual meeting. And sure enough, that next day, our local school district shut down. So we decided to use blue jeans as our platform. The reason why we use blue jeans is because my husband and I both work for the University of Pennsylvania. And at that time, that was their chosen platform. One of our assistant scoutmasters, Jake Click, who's on today, hey Jake, he is a student at Penn, so he actually assists the SPL with running the meeting, so it worked out perfect because the 3 of us all had to know how to use it anyway. So some of the reasons why we like blue jeans. You can set up different IDs and run meetings at the same time. So Jake has his own meeting ID and I have my own meeting ID. We can set up meetings simultaneously. They don't interfere with one another. There's no getting locked out of it. It worked out really well. They have downloadable metrics to see when scouts joined or left meetings. And that really helps to know if you're working on advancements, if your scout missed something. This is something you can do when you have 11 scouts, right? So you can see, oh, that person dropped. I better circle back with her and make sure that she got these parts of the advancement so that they understand it. And because Blue Jeans was not very popular, didn't really have to worry about any Zoom bombing. And lucky enough, they were just bought, well, we'll see. They were just bought out by Verizon. So they've updated some of their features, such as the backgrounds, and it used to be hard to play outside audio. So I think they've corrected those. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a little different for the girls' troops. I know Bob was saying get scouts involved and give them tasks. These scouts are all pretty young. My SPL turned 12 years old in July, right? So long term, I completely agree with what you're saying, Bob. But right now, we use the same 6 slides every single week. So we have the pledge, we have the scout oath, scout law, outdoor code. We do have an introductory slide so the scouts can wait, although I like the idea of having a little activity for them to do. Probably change that going forward. And then our last slide, because we have 11 scouts, is how are you doing? And I go through, if the SPL is doing it perfect, if the SPL is feeling a little shy that day, I go through each scout and personally ask them how they're doing, try to make that connection point. If I know something's going on with them that they might want to share, and bring them into the meeting that way. So, but having these same 6 slides every single week means that the SPL doesn't have to stress about these kinds of things. They can get to the meat of the meeting and focus on that. So that is a little bit different with a smaller troop than you would with a larger troop. Okay, next slide, please. So we try to do the fun advancements during the virtual meetings. The advancements that are more read and explain, we like to do offline, either through Google Classroom, Google Drive, they can email me, or Friday office hours. So Friday office hours was an idea that I heard about at a Scoutmaster made that suggestion during the Girls in the BSA Building the Future event that was held in May. And that was a really great idea. So what I did, Jake and I paired together, and so that we had 2 people on, and on Fridays, we had the boys meet from 3:30 to 4:30, and I was Jake's second person for youth protection. And then from 4:30 to 5:30, my scouts came in, and Jake was on there for youth protection for me. So that worked out really well. And that also, I'll put a plug in here, that's one of the ways that linked troops can really help each other take what is useful to either troop and build on that, so that nobody feels like they're second fiddle to someone else. You can work together and build your programs together. Next slide, please. So the scouts will often teach the other scouts skills that they have already learned, just like a typical scout meeting. This is during our virtuals. Sometimes, because my scouts are so young, there are skills that they haven't learned yet, or they're difficult to teach over a video conference. So I'll look for other ways. One of them is YouTube. So this video, and I think because we're a little low on time. Okay, so it's teaching latitude and longitude. And this is a way where the scouts will definitely remember it. and it's, they're sitting in Zoom classes all day at school. they don't want to come on to some kind of dry meeting. They want to have something fun and funny. They can feel a connection. So I think there's a lot of options out there to do these kind of visual teaching and keep them drawn in to the concepts and to get through some advancements. Okay, next slide, please. So another one was some fun with GPS.
I'm putting the address or what the location
With
is.
this one,
So put in.
it was really nice because you can put in, it goes through
Same location.
all the parts of GPS, trilateration with satellites, explains how to use your maps program on your phone, and exactly how to input the coordinates. Because it's not something that you could just guess. Those of you who have done it already. Okay, you need to use spacing, you need to have, you need to put in your direction and things like that. So again, this one it's not a fun one necessarily, but it's a quick way to teach it where they can go back and reference it. So the nice thing about this is now that my scouts know how to do it, they can present it in a different way next time. So instead of using the video, they can put out some coordinates for some interesting places, and then the younger scouts have to figure out what the places are. And they can even make an interesting Kahoot game out of it. Next slide, please. So they're learning valuable skills this way. They're getting an idea of how to have fun and creative ways to teach the material so they don't feel like it's boring. And they've actually created some great teaching videos on their own already. So I've saved those videos. I didn't want to show them here because that would mess up the ability for council to play this program later. But, you know, I definitely will ask them in the future if we go back to virtual, if I can reuse those. So unfortunately, I will have to tell them that they can't use chainsaw when teaching the younger scouts. Next slide, please. So you can check out these other teaching videos. I have on YouTube here, but Cradle of Liberty, Troop 98, which is Bob's troop, they have great resources on there. They started very early on with a public health merit badge webinar that was really good. Scouter Jeff on YouTube has some great material. Global Troop Resource, which I believe is a local scouter, and he might even be from our council. I think, Arlen, you've probably been on one of those videos. So the other thing that I found, this was from Scouts BSA Girls Troop Facebook site, a mystery hike. So it's the case of the missing Scoutmaster by Cindy D. Rosier. So she made a hike in her local area in California that the scouts could do. The nice thing is she did an in-person one, but she also did it on Google Maps. So the scouts can go in and do the hike on Google Maps. I have not done it yet because we have 11 scouts. We have been trying to meet in person whenever possible this summer. My kids are zoomed out. They needed a break. So we haven't done it yet, but it looks like it's really good. And then I think I'm going to suggest maybe they make their own mystery hikes. Next slide, please. Oh, and orienteering, I'll do a quick shout out to the Willows in Radnor. Has a nice orienteering course. You can download the full map from the Delaware Valley Orienteering Association. It was actually created as an Eagle project by a scout from Radnor 284. Okay, so virtual recruiting. We did a virtual recruiting event this past, I guess it was in June, and my scouts put it all together. So they did the entire agenda and did all the events. We invited all of the Weeblos and Arrow of Lights and any friends from the Lower Marion and Haverford Township area, which is my catch area. And we had three scouts, or three girls join us. 2 were Cub Scouts, 1 was not. Next slide, please. So I won't read through everything we did, but I will tell you, so an example of being prepared. So one of our scouts was teaching fire building for the outdoor adventure. She tried to do it live, but unfortunately the wind had picked up by the time we were doing it. And she was doing it on her grill. That didn't work so well. So luckily she had a video, just played the video, and she was good to go. So it was a great example for our girls on, for our potential recruits on how to be prepared and how to be resilient, because you couldn't even tell, not a hint of frustration. So another great thing was the Campfire apple packets. So that was done by a scout who really does not like to be on video. So she actually taped it, her piece, and sent it to me earlier. So this was a great way to help a shy scout to be involved, to succeed, and to be proud of herself. Because again, she's just a 12-year-old scout. And a lot of these really young ones, they do not like being on Zoom. A lot of times I don't mind if they keep their cameras off, unless we're actually doing a merit badge or something that I really need them to be on camera for. So the other one that was very interesting that I never would have thought of was was doing sketching. So a number of my scouts are really into art. So we had a step-by-step demo of drawing an eagle. And I know my scout did a fantastic job because you could actually tell that my drawing was a bird. And usually my capabilities end with stick figures, so I knew it was quite successful. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think one of the hardest things will be for recruiting, for our families to understand what our program looks like, because we may not be running our full program this fall. So try to stress to your parents what the program was like pre-COVID, and that we will return to that model once COVID has passed. So I just had a scout join a couple weeks ago. She heard of the activities that we were doing and was, it's like, that's what I want to do. So that's why she joined us. So I will say, my scouts do love going to Resica, and they love camping at Treasure Island. There's something about camping at Treasure Island, having no running water, no electricity, makes them really proud of their camping skills and their survival skills. So pretty neat to get them, to see them feeling like that about themselves. Next slide, please. So this is kind of building on what Arlen said earlier. So in my troop, many of these scouts want to meet in person. They really wanted to get outdoors. They're actually hounding me for when we can go on a camping trip, and we're working with our chartered org to get approval on that. So, and they just talked about this in the national BSA meeting earlier this week. Survey your parents, either formally or informally, to find out what they want. For us, we're thinking that if we do an overnight trip, we're going to be within 45 minutes of home. That way, we don't need to carpool. And if a scout gets sick, mom or dad can come pick the scout up. We don't have, another adult driving a sick scout home. We definitely would want to do single tents. And as was mentioned earlier, with food being an issue, one of the things we're thinking about is foil food packets, because scouts make those, heat them up, take them off the heat themselves, and add-ons can be done in single serving plastic baggies. Not great for the environment, but better to keep our scouts safe. All right, so I guess in conclusion, for all the troops out there, but especially for the girls' troops, just do the best you can. Try to get those scouts to feel like they have a place and that they have another interaction point, because a lot of my scouts are really feeling isolated, especially those ones that don't have siblings. And we really are doing them a service by continuing to interact with them. All right, thank you.
Fabulous, Maria. Thank you very much. We're almost at 2 hours, and we're at the home stretch. Let's run through a couple of more things. Another example of a good idea. This is Troop 177's virtual campfire nachos on the stove. They sent a recipe to each of their scouts a week before the meeting. They had one computer viewing the Zoom participants and a phone on a tripod filming the cooking steps. That's the upper right-hand screenshot. And then they would stop after each step and ask questions and talk about it. And the participants in the troop were showing what they were doing. In the end, everybody ate nachos together. So I've always said if adults can do virtual cocktail hours, then Scouts can do virtual nacho hours. And it's something really fun to do, very hands-on. And, believe it or not, this, again, attempts to create a sense of normalcy, and it's just something really cool to do. Okay, Bev Banks, tell us all about popcorn, please, and that fabulous photo.
Oh, thank you. My name is Beverly Banks. I am the fundraising chair for Troop 547 in North Wales. I am also the district popcorn colonel and the council popcorn colonel this year. And in the photo here, I am the one in the braids. I have a first-year scout, a third-year scout, and a committee chair. So we are an all-in scout family. And my favorite thing about scouting is making people smile. I find that giving them food and beverage at any moment in any activity makes them smile. So that picture, we are at an Oktoberfest for scouting, which unfortunately has been canceled this year, and that is our biggest fundraiser. So I know a lot of other units are dealing with this and kind of scurrying. So Trails End, I know many of you are selling popcorn, have not sold popcorn before, or haven't done it in many years, but the program has evolved. It is all virtual this year if that's what you want to do. You might not need to fundraise as much this year, but listening to all these wonderful, informative things have made me think, wow, we need more tents, we need thermometers, we need masks, we need all this. We have a lot of expenses. We need packets for the food and stuff like that. So you do need to still fundraise. And we've actually started the Trails End fundraiser. It started in July this year. And so far we have raised $19,000 for council, and that's only 72 scouts selling online. We have not shipped one bag of popcorn to anyone. We will, if you still want to try and do in-person sales and wagon sales, you can. We are not deterring you from that. It will be delivered in late September. If you want to do that, it's there. As a popcorn colonel, my favorite part of this online sale is that there is no inventory, no cash, no management. I just, send out some emails, and as a parent, I don't have to go anywhere. I'm in my PJs on the couch, and I'm saying, hey, remember last year when you bought that popcorn? We're selling it again. And I send them a link. They go to a website, they put in their credit card information, and it ships directly to their house. So it's easy. It's great. The scouts can do it. The scouts can make cute little videos. We're actually working on some videos from our top sellers that we're going to put out there. If you do order online, they are still not shipping chocolate popcorn until October because of the melting situation. And we're doing free shipping on orders $40 and above. For the older scouts, the prizes have changed. It's all Amazon gift cards. So there's no more knives, no more drones, no more helicopters that break as soon as you fly them. It's all Amazon gift cards. They can order whatever they want, and they're doing double points. So like I said, we partnered with Trails End, and I'm not even going to go into a lot of details. If you want more details, please go to colbsa.org/popcorn or trails-end.com. And this is some of the materials they've given us. You can sell $1,000 in popcorn in just a few hours, 8 hours. No site sales, no inventory. It's great. You send a couple texts. If you want the order form, because I know a lot of people like the traditional order form, there's a number there, 62771. You text order form to that number, and they'll send you a PDF of the order form, and you can print it out. They're not the chocolate popcorn and the microwave butter popcorn, which are fan favorites, are only available in online direct. And then, like I said, just send your messages. You can post it to social media, Facebook, you can send text, you can send emails. We're working on QR codes, doing virtual site sales. You know, we still need the support. And asking for it. I have found that many people are cooperating. Sit with your scout, make a list of people that you can send these messages to, and fundraise the easy way.
Awesome, Bev. Any questions on popcorn or for Beverly? I don't see anything pending. Okay, so we're in the home stretch here. One more idea, and I know John brought this up, and I think Seth brought it up also about playing games. You know, we found that a game is an essential part of a meeting, certainly in person and definitely in virtual. Many of you folks know about Kahoot. I encourage you to ask your scouts to look into GimKit also. It's much more interactive. And there's just all these sort of interesting gaming capabilities where you can like ice your opponent. You know, whenever I play, they always like to ice the Scoutmaster or blur my screens. That prevents me from earning points. Super fun. There's a free version and it doesn't cost a whole lot to do the more advanced version in GimKit. But we found participative games are really, really essential to try and get everybody involved, particularly in a larger unit. Okay, so we have a list here of places that you could go for more ideas or help. I'll open up for Q&A in a couple of seconds. We will send around this entire deck to everybody who signed up, because I know we have your email addresses, and I think everybody's contact information is embedded into the various presentations. I've been getting some private messages here about being able to reach out to some of the presenters, so you'll be able to find those. Or if they're not in there, we'll make sure that we incorporate those before we send this out. Before opening up to Q&A, I just want everybody to consider one thing. There's a lot of organizations that are stuck right now, sort of stuck like we are, trying to figure out what they're going to do. Think about youth sports. Think about, you know, choirs where, you know, you're not allowed to get together and like be singing each other and, you know, hurling viral particles or whatever they're called today. Scouting, I think, is uniquely positioned to actually continue to deliver really good stuff to youth. And we've seen some of those examples today. There's people that can help you do that, but I want to encourage you to think about that and consider this really an opportunity to rise above the adversity that's been thrust at us. And just very much the Scouting way tells you to be prepared and be helpful and think outside the box and have your youth show leadership and get involved. You guys can do it. We've been doing it. We certainly don't have the perfect mousetrap, and we just love sharing all this information and seeing what other folks are doing. Take some time, deputize some other people within your unit, especially your youth. Don't squander an opportunity to give a youth something to do. Remember also that they're sitting at home with a lot of inactive hours, and you asking them to do something will probably go a long way in getting them to get re-engaged or get more engaged and get off the gaming system. I'll stop my monologue now. And are there any questions or follow-ups? You can either type them in the chat or just unmute and ask aloud.
Hey, Bob, there are a couple of questions in the chat that I think that I need to answer. First, there's one question about how we're camping. Food preparation is going to be done. And remember that question, I think, has to do with this physical separation as far as when you're eating. We're certainly going to do that. We just felt like for a large unit to prepare food, it was a lot easier to have 1 or 2 areas for food preparation rather than 8. And so that's how we're doing it more what we call jamboree style or troop style rather than patrol style. We certainly use the patrol method in everything that we do, and that's why we're going to have patrols each take a turn for a certain segment of each meal to be prepared in those 1 or 2 or maybe at the most 3 areas. So each patrol will be involved in the food preparation and distribution, but it's not going to be where they're segregated into their own area where they do everything on their own. it seems a lot easier for a large unit to manage things this way. But as far as the consumption of the food, everyone's going to be physically separated, according to all the guidelines. And the other question that came up has to do with some of the child abuse advertising, and we've had even lawyers contacting Scouts this last week, and so this is something, it's a completely separate topic, and I don't want to get too bogged down on this, but I would refer all leaders to the information that's on the BSA website about the bankruptcy and the litigation and the bar date. And if I can just briefly summarize what you should be telling parents is that there's a bar date in mid-November coming up, so you're going to see the frequency of this advertising go nowhere but up, I think, as people are trying to get more and more people to be part of this claim as far as the litigation that's going on. So what the BSA official position is that we certainly are not trying to do anything to shirk our responsibilities, and that all victims are going to be compensated for any child abuse that's happened by any Scout leader in the past. And that's certainly what we have consistently tried to do throughout this whole process. And in order for our organization to continue, there has to be some limit as far as when claims can be made about some of these child abuse claims. And so that's what the bankruptcy protection is doing, is setting a limit, and that's when anybody can enter into this legal litigation, and that's going to be mid-November. And then the BSA will certainly compensate all people who have been abused in the past, and that's been consistently what we've done over time, and any litigation that's been brought against the BSA for any of these child abuse claims in the past. So I don't want to go too much more in depth into that, but there's a lot of information and resources that you can get from the BSA website about this. So if you have any more questions about that, I'm happy to answer them as a representative of the council and the BSA.
Thank you, Arland. And again, if there are questions related to that after this meeting, probably best to go to the district executive, right? And to get a direct line into the council for an official response.
Or to me, that's fine.
Or to you directly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing no questions, listen, just a final list of ideas here. As a roundtable commissioner, I want to encourage you to go to roundtables. Hey, in Baden-Powell, we've started inviting youth to come to roundtables. So we're doing separate breakouts for the Patrol Leaders Council where they can share ideas on what they're doing. And so that's a really great opportunity for you to witness what other folks are doing and really share your good experiences or get help with any particular challenges you have. Obviously, your commissioner and district executive are great resources. They touch a lot of other units and they can help you with specific needs. Always involve your youth and don't squander an opportunity to ask your Scouts to do something. It's easy to just do it yourself, but in the end, once you've delegated them with some sort of responsibility, it's going to be better for everyone. Super easy to visit other troops. Like I said, our PLC has attended maybe 5 or 6 other troops virtual meetings just to get an idea of what they're doing. And we've had several troops attend ours. You're welcome to join any of our meetings. We meet on Fridays at 7:30 religiously every Friday. There's always Troop 98 meetings on Friday. Look at social media groups and then consult your website resources. So let's see, any final questions here? Discussion on what the Scouts, your troop, is doing to make sure the kids are safe. Thank you, John. Yeah, that's always important to talk about, how we do youth protection and any specific things that you do. Okay, last chance for any comments or questions before we close out. Seeing none. I wish you all a tremendous success in your fall program. Hope we run into each other again. And if I or any of other presenters can be helpful resource for you, please contact us. You'll get all of our information shortly via email, and I would say in the next couple of days with a copy of the presentation. May I have a volunteer lead us in the Scout Law for a closing? Do I need
I'll
to
do
pick
it,
on
Bob.
John?
No, I'll do
I'm going to
it.
pick
All
on
right.
John. All right, John, here we go.
I'll be like, kid, is this the oath or the law? It's the law.
Oh.
A scout is trustworthy,
Trustworthy,
loyal,
Loyal,
helpful,
helpful,
friendly,
friendly,
courteous,
courteous,
kind,
obedient,
obedient, cheerful,
cheerful, thrifty,
thrifty,
brave,
brave,
clean, and
and reverent.
too. Thank you very much,
All
John.
right.
Thank you all,
Mhm.
and have a great weekend, and wish you the most successful scouting in the coming scouting year. Cheers.
Thanks, Bob.
everyone.
All right.
And if anyone wants to stay on, John or Dave, any?
I'm happy to debrief for a minute if you want. Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, happy to.
I learned a lot of good stuff in this.
It's a lot of good information. I agree.
John, we're going out and buying Scout staves today.
It's just a dowel, right? A simple dowel, I think, right?
Yeah, or it's a broom handle, more like a broom
Broom
handle,
handle?
but yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What a great idea. And then we can
Yeah.
like decorate it for each patrol, and like I love it. It's just very cool.
Yeah.
As long as they don't hit each other with them.
Well, I was wondering if the frying
the
pan
patrol
and the
leaders have
stave
them.
were for discipline,
Yeah.
you know, like
It's the
progressive
motivational,
discipline.
yeah.
Start with the stick and move to the cast iron pan.
That's right. Only the patrol leaders have them.
Very cool.
Great.
Awesome job. Awesome.
There were 30, I think at the max there were 33 participants on.
Yes.
Did you see that, Arlen?
Yeah. Yeah, and we had 25 pretty consistently until the end. So
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Seth got a
lot
little
of
long
good-
there. I mean, great content. You know, I was trying to like speed him up. I think people were just, you know, but
Yeah.
again, in terms of presentation, what I should have done was incorporated some of his photos directly into the slides so he could speak to those. But
It was great though. All the information was different. You know,
Yeah.
there wasn't anything repetitive, and I thought that was really important.
yeah, whereas some of the other be prepared things, I think it's been mainly the same message, and there's a lot of diversity with these presentations today. That's great.
good stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Nobody should be doing nothing, right? Every troop should be
Oh,
active.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
And you know, I've seen so many examples of units that just completely shut down when the pandemic started, and they just said, well, you know, our charter organization's not open, or for one reason or another, they just stopped.